Yeah, well, that's always a trick with regulation is that like regulation always runs behind technology. Think about even
Yeah,
just like consumer level drones.
yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah,
people are flying over people's houses, and we don't have regulations to say what can and can't be done with just
yeah,
regular everyday RC drones.
yeah,
And regulators still trying to figure that out.
yeah,
So yeah, so yeah, then it becomes a matter of you've
yeah,
got to have whoever's in charge of that private enterprise in regards to spaceflight being like super particular about absolutely everything.
yeah. This is a whole nother rabbit hole we could dive into.
Yeah, now often I find that's how it is for like a lot of people. I'm like, we could probably go on for like 3 hours about all kinds
Yeah,
of stuff.
yeah,
But I do want to give you a chance to talk a little bit more about kind of your sports stuff. Um,
sure.
there's kind of three different ways I can go. I do want to kind of harken back. I think I'm correct in this when I talked to Corey. Were you part of the beer mile?
Oh yeah,
Corey said, I
the
think,
first
were you the winner? Was that?
I did win the beer mile.
Okay, so take me
So
back
we
through the beer mile. What's your technique for being the winner? Like how do you get
I
to
mean,
be that champion?
I should say I was the winner of four individuals who
Okay.
participated. Um, but I will also say I'm not definitely not the fastest of those four individuals.
Yeah, well that's what Corey
Um,
said.
so we just did this on like a random Thanksgiving. Um, season was over. Um, I forget. Usually a lot of these shenanigans would start when Greg would get drunk and have an idea. And so he got drunk and was like, "Guys, I'm doing a beer mile on this day. You should come with me." And so then we did it, and so we did it we called it the Charlestown Classic, I believe, because we did it at the Charlestown track.
Uh-huh.
But I had a little bit of a secret weapon in that I was also in a fraternity in college, so
Okay.
in which drinking beers was frequent uh, and required speed. But so yeah, I'm not the fastest out of all of them. I was very nervous going into this because I did not want to throw up. Uh, but
It's the four of you. What's like? So what's your mentality? Are you like, I want to win this, but I don't want to throw up, or are you just concerned about not throwing up?
I was mostly just concerned about not throwing up, and because I don't know, I hate throwing up. It's not a good feeling.
No.
Um, and I'm not really much of a drinker anymore, too. So my mentality was just, was kind of like, take my time and like each four, for those who don't know, the beer mile is, 4 laps around the track, well, 4+ laps around the track with a beer after every 400 or every quarter mile. And so you start off drinking, and my strategy for the first lap was just get the beer down and build it up and see how it felt in my stomach. Slowly, kind of burp it out, and then I was not the first one to finish. I mean, everyone kind of finished the first beer at the same time, and well, maybe I finished a little ahead of everybody, but they quickly caught up, and I was like, oh God, this is not going well. But then the second beer comes along, and I finish first again, and I'm running, and this time, uh, they only catch up to me at the very end, and I was like, oh, I'm kind of putting a gap into people, and I don't know, I just, I'm just used to kind of chugging beverages or beverages, I guess you could say,
Okay.
but uh, yeah, you just got to practice chugging. Honestly, that's I think that's the
It
secret.
seems like that's the key. It's like
Yeah,
if you take 5 minutes to get one down, there's no way
yeah,
you're even if you're like top flight sub 4 minute miler, like you're just not.
oh yeah. I mean, the difference is, if you look like on we posted it on Strava, obviously.
Uh-huh.
and Strava wouldn't count the time that you were stopped and drinking. So if you look at like, I ran, I think I went like a 5:50 was my average run time.
Uh-huh.
But my final beer mile time was 6:30 versus everyone else was like, low fives. And it's just the difference was that I could chug faster.
Yeah.
I honestly wasn't thinking about it. I was just going for it. And I'm probably overanalyzing it right now. Um, but I will say it's a lot more fun than I thought.
Uh-huh.
And, if you're bored on a Thanksgiving, on your long weekend for Thanksgiving, it can be a fun activity to do with your friends for sure.
Nice.
Yeah.
So I'm half curious about your experience with Ironman Maryland, but I do have to get diverted first. And with the yoga, since you're a certified yoga instructor, and I saw something about like you had to have 200 hours or something to get
Oh
certified.
yeah.
So like, how do you? So I mean, you swam in college. You're a competitive triathlete now. You're the beer mile champion, and 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 you're a
I
certified
don't
yoga
think
instructor. Like, how do
I don't
you?
think that warrants being on my resume.
Well, I'm gonna count it at least for the podcast because it's entertaining, I think.
Okay.
Um, but I mean, I like how do you keep up with all these different sports? I guess if we'll call it yoga a sport, physical activity.
Well, I don't know. I'm definitely one of those people where physical activity helps calm me down and decrease stress. Like I definitely get more stressed, and my mental health suffers if I'm not exercising. Um, so for me, I kind of started doing yoga to, well, because it was cold during the winter time here in Boston, and some friends in my degree program would go to hot yoga on like the weekends.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, this seems like a good yoga's like good for you. It's like, oh, it's good to like stretch out and stuff, before with all this other training that I'm doing. And I just slowly kind of got more interested in it, and I found that I actually learned a lot about anatomy and biomechanics in general. So it related a lot to my research.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I kind of then did the training. The training was like on the weekends during like the off season. So I did the training with a friend to kind of really learn about it a little bit more, and not to like be too much of like a hater to the yoga people, but there were definitely some times where I was like, this is total bullshit, and I'm never going to say this again in my life, or never do this again in my life. There's like definitely a spiritual aspect to yoga, which
Mm-hmm.
uh, is I don't subscribe to necessarily, but and I think there are a little more like modern takes on it that
Mm-hmm.
I think more people can relate to, like this idea of like mindfulness, um, which definitely kind of like was interesting to me, and I think it's like important for any athlete to be kind of mindful and not to kind of get caught up in all I think the idea of a mindful athlete is someone who is not caught up in all the data and can just kind of focus on like what their body is telling them right here and now, and not
Yeah.
think about how am I going to feel later, or what did I feel before this.
Yeah.
So it really just a lot of it just tied together with my interest in sport, my research. So I did the training, and I taught for a while, but then eventually, as is typical with the PhD got in the way, and I had to drop something in order to finish in a timely manner, and so I just stopped teaching,
Mm-hmm.
and I also kind of realized that I wanted to. This was when I was like pretty set on being a professor, and I needed more teaching experience, so I got a
Mm-hmm.
TAing job instead, and that kind of supplemented the income I was getting from the from yoga. So
Did you notice
I mean,
like was it like were you doing yoga at the same time you were doing triathlon?
yeah, yeah.
Did you notice like
So
like a positive effect between the two or?
no, I definitely, and I think I'm actually suffering from it now. Um, when I was doing a lot of yoga, I definitely saw that I recovered more quickly. I didn't get any injuries,
Mm.
and I often like, yeah, so those are the two big ones, which, if you ask any athlete, hey, do you want to recover faster and not get injured? I think a lot of them will say yes,
Yeah.
especially triathletes.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think a lot of it had to do with, uh, it's like not so much cardio, but there's a lot of like functional movement involved in yoga, and trying to activate certain muscle groups that maybe aren't activated as frequently
Hmm.
in triathlon. So if you think about triathlon, you're isolated in a single kind of plane, right? Running, you're kind of flexing and extending your knees and hips a lot. Same thing for cycling, and same thing for swimming. You're kind of in this one plane, and so yoga tries to kind of get at all the planes.
Hmm.
You're moving more outside of that reference frame and strengthening like glute muscles and abductors and adductors that can oftentimes get weak during repeated physical activity in just the flexion extension plane.
Hmm.
And so I definitely think there's a benefit to that. Really, that sort of light strength and stability training that I think helps with recovery and stuff like that. And I think like also stretching helps with recovery, and that added extra movement so you're not as sedentary, gets the blood flowing too, um, kind of remove some of the lactic acid from your muscles. And then finally, if you do hot yoga, even though it can be incredibly frustrating, uh, you know, it's like being in a sauna. So you get that sort of idea of expanding your plasma volume potentially.
Hmm.
So there's potentially that cardiovascular benefit. And yoga makes you makes you feel good. It's a time where you can distract yourself from whatever work you have, whatever work you have, whatever training you're doing, and just kind of focus on that.
Hmm.
And it's just a good way to kind of forget about other things in your life too.
Yeah. So
So
like
yeah.
it, so if I was going to
So
add it into my training, am I doing it just once a week or like what's your suggestion?
um, definitely start easy. Probably, I would definitely start easy. I mean, if you're going from like nothing to then doing like an hour and a half yoga class, it's probably a little extreme. I mean, there's definitely some hard poses that your class might try.
Hmm.
Um, and you don't want to hurt yourself too, going too deep into a stretch. So ease into it. I definitely say I think like once a week is great. Like with any sort of strength routine that you add to your training. Um, and then you can kind of build it from there. If you kind of learn enough from classes, or if you really like it and you like a teacher training or something, and you start to incorporate like 30 minutes instead of like 1 hour class a day, I think there's benefit to like doing maybe two 30-minute sessions in a week.
Hmm.
um yeah. I mean, when I was at my peak, I was going to yoga like twice a week, I think,
Hmm.
for like an hour and for like 75 minutes. And that seemed to do the trick. And I would try to do one on like my recovery day, and then the other one typically fell like in the middle of my like peak training.
Hmm.
And sometimes what I even do is like go for a run before the yoga class. So then like during the yoga class, I was just, all right, this is where I can chill. I don't need to kill myself. Because you can definitely tell there are certain people who are like type A, and they're like, okay, I'm here to work out and I gotta like get the most
Hmm.
out of this class. So I'm gonna like do every single push-up they telling me to do. I'm gonna do extra abs. I'm gonna like kill myself and do everything extra. But I think you should. It took me a while to learn this, but there's definitely a benefit to taking it a little bit easier and really kind of listening to, or like trying to sense like in your, well, what feels good, what doesn't feel good, maybe what needs a little bit more stretching or strength training than others areas of
Hmm.
the body and stuff like that.
Hmm.
Because contrary to popular belief, you can't hurt yourself in yoga. You can pull a muscle.
Hmm.
If you're trying to do like a crazy inversion, you can fall on your head and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
with any sport that you take on for the first time, definitely ease into it. Um, but yeah, and I think my biggest piece of advice would be to like not compare yourself to others too.
Mm-hmm.
Just do your own thing. You you know you're not there to like show off to the person next to you. You should be there to recover and enjoy yourself and detach from whatever else you have going on in life for like an hour or so.
So thinking about
Yeah.
recovery, this is the question I ask everybody, trying to be mindful of your time.
Yeah.
I always ask everybody because this is a universal thing we all eat. So I'm always curious if you had to choose one recovery food for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Chocolate milk.
Solid answer.
Yeah.
So I was like, I've had a couple guests mention that so far. So
Oh yeah, chocolate milk for sure. Um, I bet Greg. I bet Greg said ice cream. Did he say it?
I think he said he wanted to say ice cream. I can't
Yeah,
remember what he
definitely.
said.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Him and my girlfriend. I've never seen. They eat them a lot of. I've never seen people eat so much ice cream.
you haven't spent time around me.
Oh,
I eat a lot. Richard, if people want to find you and see what kind of antics you're up to, where can they find you?
yeah. So I'm on Twitter and Instagram. My at Fineman for both of them, and then Facebook is just Richard.Fineman. Um, yes, if you really are really interested in my research, I'm on ResearchGate, which is like this social network for researchers. There, I'm
Uh-huh.
just under Richard Feynman too. Yeah, has anyone ever plugged their ResearchGate on this podcast?
Not yet, but I
All
mean,
right.
hopefully that becomes a thing.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Um, but yeah, that's how you can. Oh, I'm also on Strava.
So you can
Yeah,
actually see what you're doing.
yeah, yeah. So you can see the swim I logged like 10 minutes before our conversation.
Nice. I
Yeah,
swam this morning. I was like, I wonder if I'll still have the goggle lines on my face.
yeah,
And yeah, I'm all
yeah.
right. Anyway,
Sweet.
thanks for coming on today, Richard.
Yeah, thank you. It was fun. Thanks for having me.
Take care.
Take care.